Christopher Nolan has done it again. I literally just walked out of the Odyssey, and I genuinely think I watched one of the best films of the year. And honestly, one of Christopher Nolan's best films. Going into this movie, I never actually read Homer's The Odyssey. I knew the basic story. I knew about the Trojan horse. I knew about Odysseus was trying to make his way home after the Trojan War. But that's really where the knowledge ended. It was, just kind of like your basic stuff. But somehow Nolan takes a story that's nearly 3,000 years old and makes it feel exciting, emotional, modern, and surprisingly easy to follow. So today we're going to be talking about the story, the incredible cast, the IMAX experience, and Christopher Nolan's filmmaking, and whether this movie deserves your money. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Sigma Duocast. I'm your host, Rick, and this is a Sigma review episode. These are my favorite type of episodes because they are completely fresh reactions. I literally just got done watching The Odyssey at my local theater here in IMAX because that's the only way to watch it. And I wanted to sit down before I forget anything and share my thoughts. This isn't going to be a breakdown of Greek mythology or Homer's original text because honestly, I've never read it, which I will most likely will now. But I know the general story and some of the major characters. But I'm coming this from a perspective of someone who just, loves history, mythology, obviously Christopher Nolan films, and, just great cinema. So as always, this review will stay spoiler light as for the first part of the episode. Honestly, as I think about it more right now as I'm speaking, it's going to be probably no spoilers whatsoever because I want you to go and watch this movie. So... And if you haven't and you're listening to this, hey, don't worry. I'm not going to spoil anything. It's just going to be my thoughts on what I thought of the film. And if you did already see the movie, then welcome to the episode and my perspective on the film. So I want to do this kind of quickly as possible, trying to get the Sigma review episodes to be a little shorter for you guys as the listeners. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the story behind the story. So before we actually talk about Nolan's movie, I think it's important to understand why The Odyssey is such a big deal. Homer's The Odyssey is one of the oldest surviving works of literature. Historians generally date it to around the 8th century BCE. BCE, which means this story has been told for nearly 3,000 years. It's considered one of the foundational stories of Western literature. The basic premise is simple. After helping the Greeks win the Trojan War, Odysseus begins his journey home. And just a little prefix, I'm going to have trouble saying a lot of these names, so bear with me. The problem is getting home takes him around another 10 years. So he's in the Trojan War for 10 years, and then it takes him another 10 years. So he's away for like 20 years from his home. Along the way, he encounters gods, monsters, impossible choices, temptation, tragedy, and every obstacle imaginable. It's basically one giant adventure about perseverance, leadership, family, and never giving up. And somehow Christopher Nolan manages to make this ancient story feel incredibly modern. So, what's the story of this film? So the first thing I noticed was how approachable this movie is. Again, if you've never read The Odyssey, don't let that stop you. As I said already, I haven't either, but I knew the broad strokes of the story, but this movie never made me feel lost. And I watched it with my wife and she said the same thing. She never felt lost, easy to follow. So, one thing about Nolan that he does very well is the structure of his stories. The film constantly moves between the present timeline and flashbacks to the Trojan War and Odysseus's earlier adventures. So it's kind of like, hey, tell me the story of what happened, and then it goes into actual scenes of what happened to kind of bring the story all around. So normally a movie that jumps around this much can be confusing. Here, it never did. The flashbacks always felt motivated. Usually another character asks Odysseus about something that happened, and someone recounts the event and then naturally transitions into the past. So it's really interesting how they did that, and I really loved that structure. it never felt random. And one of my favorite sequences was seeing the Trojan horse plan unfold. So even though most people already know that story, seeing it presented through Nolan's style was fantastic. Because again, you get flashbacks where we're at, boom, boom. By not diving too much into the Trojan War, like we're just in that long enough to understand what's happening in the Trojan War, to understand why Odysseus is respected and why so many people either admire him or resent him. And what surprised me the most, though, was the pacing. This movie runs approximately 2 hours and 52 minutes. Classic Nolan, right? And honestly, I couldn't believe it when it ended because it never dragged. Every scene felt important. I never checked my watch once. I mean, that's one of the biggest compliments I can give any movie that we're starting to get comfortable with these 3-hour length films is that when you can sit there and say, hey, it didn't feel like it was long. I didn't feel like there was a dry moment. I got bored. Those are the moments that make these 3-hour film movies fantastic. And lately there's been quite a few of them. So overall, though, story was fantastic. I really, really love how Nolan approached it and what he wrote and how he adapted it. So story, top marks. Let's talk about the cast next. So this movie was absolutely loaded with talent. It was crazy. Like the ensemble cast, you had Matt Damon playing fantastic as Odysseus, and then you had Tom Holland continues proving he's so much more than Spider-Man. Like Tom Holland is, to me, he is not being solely typecast as Peter Parker Spider-Man. He is doing so many different projects. I still feel his voice sounds the same in every movie he does when he does like an English American accent. That's the only criticism I have with Tom Holland, is that whether you're watching Spider-Man, this movie, Uncharted, anytime he has an American English accent, it almost sounds the same every time. I almost feel like they should kind of let him do like in his just native voice, just do a film where he speaks English. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't think there is a movie out there that he speaks like natively. So interesting thing. I want to do some research on that. But anyways, Anne Hathaway delivers another incredible performance. I love Anne Hathaway. I know some people don't like her for whatever reason. I think she's great. And then you have Robert Pattinson. Wow. Like, honestly, I want to see this guy play as a villain in more films because, he has this calm intensity that's like unsettling, but it's like in the best way possible. Like some of the times you sit there, you just want to punch this dude in his face. But half the time it's like, you're good, man. You're good. And then there are two casting choices that I wasn't going to talk about them, but because they generated a lot of online discussion before the movie even released, I felt in this review it was worth spending just a couple seconds about it. And that's with the casting of Elliot Page and Lupita Nyong'o. Again, I'm sorry, pronunciation of some of these names. But so there was a lot of like stuff going on when these two got announced on the characters they played. So, after actually watching the movie, I honestly think most of the criticism completely falls apart so you have Elliot Page, and if you don't know who Elliot Page is, go do your research. I'm not going to dive into it right now on this. I have no issue with Elliot Page, fantastic individual, and I think he's doing some amazing things. And he got casted into this film, and immediately people thought he was playing Achilles. So if you've watched, the only comparable thing out there is Troy, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. The 2004 film, Brad Pitt played Achilles. So there was a lot of memes going around about him being compared to Brad Pitt and Achilles, and like, this is what we're doing, really, like, very poor casting. So let me set this straight. He doesn't play Achilles. I don't know where or how it got known that he was going to be portraying Achilles. He portrays a completely different character entirely, and his performance works well within the story. I think he's not on the screen that long, but his little mini arc and how it compares to Odysseus, it's like, it was fine. It was great. I don't know. I had no issue with it. I think Elliot was fantastic in the character that he played, and that's that. Next, we had Lupita Nyong'o, and she was amazing as well. Now, while she appears as Helen of Troy, and this is where the issue came, because, again, there was a 2004 Troy film. I think Diane Kruger played Helen, and so Lupita portrays Helen, but she actually has a dual role, so she actually spends much more time portraying, again, I'm going to mess this name up, Clytemnestra. And so, she brings the tremendous emotional weight to both roles. I think she did great. And again, you don't see her that much as Helen. You see her more as the other character. So, to me, a lot of the online backlash felt like people deciding they were upset before they even seen the movie. And I think if you know, you know, and that's why these two actors got the hate for who they portrayed. And I don't know, dude. I think they did fantastic. Their performances were well. Once you actually watch it, like I said, the performance speaks for themselves. They did great. And then we have John Leguizamo, which I didn't know he was. I don't know if I knew he was in the movie, but let me tell you, man, he surprised me because every time he shows up in a movie, I'm reminded of how underrated he is. He doesn't have to dominate the screen. He just elevates every scene he's in. And honestly, I don't think there was any weak performance anywhere in the cast, but I really love seeing John Leguizamo there representing, and I'm glad he was in the film, and his character was great. Every little minor role he does, even in the John Wick films, John's fantastic. And there are so many actors in this movie, so many. I mean, I can go through a list of everyone and say how great everyone was. But at the end of the day, the performance, the acting in this film was top tier. I don't think there was a single actor from main to side to sub to, A, B, C, D, go down the list, to a backup, to an extra, you name it. They were all fantastic. Not a single one disengaged me from the illusion of the film and the era and everything they were playing. So cast, top tier cast. Next, let's talk about, we'll talk a little bit about Christopher Nolan and IMAX, because this movie is pretty important when it comes to IMAX. So, this is where Christopher Nolan separates himself from almost every other director working today. He isn't just making movies, he's preserving filmmaking. Nolan has always been a huge advocate for practical effects. Real sets, real locations, real stunts. Whenever possible, he'd rather build something than animate it. And I absolutely love that philosophy about him. I finally got to see Oppenheimer not too long ago, by not long ago, I mean last week. And it was great. It was a fantastic film. And even then, he created a mini version, explosion of an atom bomb or what have you. He created something where he was able to film, capture, and was able to quote unquote represent what that looks like. So on film, so phenomenal work. So Christopher Nolan never disappoints, and I love his film style. But now let's talk about the IMAX portion of it, because the Odyssey is the first film shot entirely on IMAX film cameras. Thanks to newly developed IMAX cameras that were quiet enough to record dialogue scenes, that's a remarkable achievement and something Nolan had wanted to do for years. And I mean, if you know, when it comes to IMAX cameras, they're massive. You can only do so much. You can only film so much in a matter of time. I saw an interview with Tom Holland where he had to cut, Christopher Nolan had to cut every 3 minutes. And Tom thought that he was just doing a very, very poor job of acting. But in reality is that was the duration of how long the IMAX camera can record in intervals. So you hit record, you can do up to 3 minutes, stop, pick up where you left off, hit record. It's kind of like the meta glasses where you can only do 3 minutes or 5 minutes, depending on your settings. And so it's very interesting. And for the whole film to be filmed that way, because, a lot of movies have been transitioning to more and more, a couple scenes here, but then more. And like I said, Nolan has been big on IMAX since, I believe, The Dark Knight was the one where he really put a lot of effort. Excuse me, put a lot of effort in that. So I saw it at my local theater. It's an IMAX theater. Now, the theater isn't one of the locations showing the rare 15 to 70 millimeter IMAX film print, but it's still an IMAX presentation. I would love to see it in true IMAX. So if you have access to a true 70 millimeter IMAX theater, absolutely go see it there. Fun fact is that for those theaters specifically, because there's only so many in the country, tickets went on sale for those theaters a whole year in advance. And within the first hours, if not a single hour, they sold out, which is insane for tickets for a movie theater, for a film to be viewed in theaters. Again, IMAX, different experience. A year in advance, they go on sale and they sold out like almost immediately. That's insane. That's not only is that the power of, what the film is, but Christopher Nolan at that point. So, but if you don't have one of those, native IMAX theaters, don't let it stop you. Even in digital IMAX, the movie is stunning. The ocean, the landscapes, the massive battle scenes, everything just feels bigger. And this is one of those movies that deserves the biggest screen and the loudest sound system you can find. And I'm telling you right now, like, I saw it IMAX digital. There was even moments where I was like, the sound, holy smokes, incredible. I mean, the cinematography is the visual language of the movie. It's the framing, the lighting, the camera movement, composition, and overall look. And IMAX cameras capture that. So needless to say, the cinematography in this film specifically is absolutely incredible. So do yourself a favor, do yourself a good deed, whatever you want to call it. Go watch this on IMAX. If you don't have an IMAX nearby, hour, 2 hours, 3 hours away, it's worth it. I highly, highly recommend going and watching this film in IMAX. Standard age just ain't going to cut it. It's just not going to cut it. Sorry. All right. So I covered the cast. I covered the story. I covered the cinematography, Christopher Nolan's direction. I could talk about the music and the sound. It's amazing. The music and the sound, everything is just phenomenal, top tier. The one question that's going to come up after watching this film is going to be, do you need to watch Troy first before watching this film? Now, again, Troy is a film that came out in 2004 that starred Brad Pitt, Eric Bana, and it was about the Trojan War. So, again, this is going to be a question that I think a lot of people are going to ask. Should you watch this before seeing Odyssey? And my simple answer is yes. Hell yes. But you got to go into it with a very, very important disclaimer, if not a couple, is that although Troy does cover the Trojan War, which takes place before the events of the Odyssey, this will give you some context of characters like Agamemnon, I don't know how to say these names, Menelaus, Helen, Achilles, and of course, Odysseus. The context can definitely enrich your viewing experience, which is great, but it's very, very important to know that Troy is not a direct sequel to Nolan's film. It has nothing to do with it, because Troy takes some major creative liberties when it comes to the Greek mythology. It changes characters. It removes many of the mythological elements. So it's not a required homework or anything like that. And the film just kind of gives you an idea of some of the characters, some of the stories and stuff. Again, a good majority of that film though deviates from the source material. So yeah, it's good to watch it if you're like all hyped up about it. If you really want to know, what to watch or read beforehand, you really want to read the original story, and that's Homer's, the Iliad and the Odyssey. I think that's how you pronounce the first one. Again, I am terrible with it. I didn't practice anything. I just jumped on here and started recording because this movie was amazing and it blew my mind. But if you simply want a fun movie that gives you some background before this one, again, Troy is still worth watching. Just don't go in there thinking, oh, I watched Troy, now I know everything. No, it's not that. So final thoughts that I have for this film. So one thing I really appreciated about this movie is that it reminded me of why I've always been fascinated with Greek mythology. A while back, I did an episode with my younger brother, Alex, and in the episode, we talked about history, mythology, and whether ancient stories contain kernels or real historical events. You know, it's hard to know what's real and what's not in the past because we didn't see it or live it ourselves. So I like to believe mythology hopefully was real because I think it's just so fascinating. So whether these myths are literal history or not, they've endured for thousands of years because they continue to resonate with people. And that's great. That's essentially what's great with storytelling. That's what storytelling does for us. It survives generations. And this movie also made me want to dive deeper into the original works of Homer. So again, I'm going to go ahead and probably order these books and read them because I really want to know what the original, source material was. And on top of that, because I just recently started playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag because I'm all into the Caribbeans because going to my recent vacation and everything, Assassin's Creed also made a game called Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which took place during that time, so to speak. And that game was amazing. It really, really brought back a love for me for the Assassin's Creed franchise. After 1, 2, Brotherhood, I kind of just drifted away from Assassin's Creed. But Odyssey really brought me back in. I played the heck out of that game. And ever since seeing this movie, I got it. I still have that. This is probably one of the few games I've kept installed on my Xbox. So I will definitely be playing that. So if you're like me, where you go to the movie and it was just so good and you're all of a sudden hyped up, go watch Troy, go watch whatever old school movies you can find, even like Clash of the Titans and things like that. But if you want to play an interactive experience, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is definitely one to check out. Because again, I just have a strong urge to go to ancient Greece. So, all right. So now let's get into the rating of the film. So we're going to do 5 out of 5. Or actually, no, what do I normally do for a segment? We do best out of 10, right? So story, top tier. Cast, top tier. Cinematography, top tier. Editing, music, all top tier. Taking advantage of the IMAX experience, super top tier. I still hope to go and watch the film again in a true IMAX format, 70 millimeter. I have one not too far from where I live, so I'm going to go check it out. And then, of course, Christopher Nolan once again proves why he's one of the greatest filmmakers of this generation. So, that all being said, final verdict. Overall, the Odyssey, from me personally, gets a perfect 10 out of 10. It's visually breathtaking, emotionally engaging, expertly paced, and anchored by outstanding performances from one of the best ensemble casts I have seen in years. Christopher Nolan continues to show why he remains one of the defining filmmakers of our era. His commitment to practical effects, large format filmmaking, and telling ambitious stories in a way that still connect with audience is something I deeply admire. If you're a fan of history, Greek mythology, epic adventures, or simply great filmmaking, I can't recommend this movie enough. See it in IMAX if you can. If you have access to true 70 millimeter IMAX theater, that's the ideal way to experience it. But even if your local theater offers digital IMAX, as mine did, you'll still be treated to an incredible presentation that showcases just how spectacular the film looks. This is the kind of movie that reminds me why I still love going to the theater. Some films are entertaining, some films are memorable, and every once in a while, a film comes along that feels like an event. The Odyssey is one of those films. Thank you guys for listening. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy Nolan's interpretation? Have you read Homer's original work? And where does this rank among Christopher Nolan's filmography? Until next time, guys, this has been another Sigma Review episode. I'm Rick, and I will see you guys on the next one.